This reply to Jimbo Gaines, first cycle, how much and why? Trained by JP. 300 milligrams test because you don't need more. Just plain as day, you don't need more. Don't ask questions, bro. What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be talking about the transformation of British. Hopefully I'm not butchering the fuck out of that, but this is the amazing before and after from last February to just a few weeks ago. Pretty fucking substantial. Look how much tissue has been added. Absolutely mind-boggling amounts of progress here. And interestingly enough, the dosages and compounds selected to achieve this transformation were transparently disclosed by Trained by JP. This is Jordan Peters' Instagram. If you haven't seen, not Jordan Peterson. People get confused with that. Jordan Peters. He is a very well-respected coach, I believe in the UK, and he is a mass monster in his own right. He's actually more moving towards downsizing now to be mindful of health, but you know, he's been through the fucking ringer of this bodybuilding game. He's done, you know, the most extreme of shit, learned everything that he could learn, like from firsthand experience, tons of clients, and, you know, walks the walk. And, you know, it's like literally the poster boy of like progressive overload essentially and working your fucking ass off in the gym. And we did a video last year about him quitting bodybuilding and pursuing a more healthy, you know, approach to his body composition goals and whatnot. We also went over his blood work almost a year ago at this point, and it was on his more like mild stack and what my interpretation was at the time. And more recently, he's had you know, some interesting posts on dosages and compound selection, notably one of them being this reply to Jimbo Gaines, first cycle, how much and why? Trained by JP. 300 milligrams test because you don't need more. Just plain as day, you don't need more. Don't fucking ask questions, bro. Hands up emoji. Thank you for the answer. Now, this is something that gets a lot of scrutiny in the industry for nonsensical reasons. Individuals think that for some reason, if you take 250 to 300 instead of 500, you basically need to take your fucking 500 and shut the fuck up. That is, take your 500 test and shut the fuck up is the mantra of the forums and has been pervaded throughout the industry for years and years. And people who oppose it get a lot of flack for it, when in reality, no one is really disagreeing with the fact that more equals more. In the dose response studies, we see a clear benefit of going above 300 to 500, for example. Here we have dose response studies. Like again, even in this dose response model, we had 600 building more tissue than 300 with, you know, well tolerated by all individuals essentially. So again, like why would you not just do 600? You know, it makes no fucking sense. Why don't you just start at 6? Because no one in their right mind is going to be advocating cycling off, crashing your endocrine system, recovering to a baseline metric homeostatic set point on your blood work of like your LH and FSH just came back into range, your liver enzymes look good, your kidney parameters look good, your hematology is normal. Now we blast again. Like no one is asserting that you do a 250 cycle to shut yourself off and then crash your shit, do a PCT with, you know, again, drugs that are not overly healthy, you know, using SERMs and stuff to try and restart your system and then get back to baseline only to blast yourself again with 250, you know, is the ROI really there? You know, I'm pretty sure no one is asserting you should be cycling on and off of 250. No one has ever fucking said that as far as I know. However, for a slow and steady approach to bodybuilding, which is what the accrual of tissue is, you know, not blasting your face off and hitting unnecessary walls of side effects, requiring ancillaries that may otherwise not be, you know, needed to emergency deployed because of a fucking random side effect you could have avoided by titrating more carefully. All of these different things that accumulate or, you know, show up insidiously to butt fuck you that you might have avoided by titrating because you could otherwise introduce a super physiological amount and then titrate by needs as based on your dose response. Are you even a bodybuilder to begin with, or are you a guy playing sports? You know, like there is huge variability in what people are using this shit for and what they think. Like it's not just everyone needs 500 and that's fucking it. 250 to 300. Does that make sense for a guy who is getting into this to start? Quick interruption to bring you a note from one of our sponsors. This is Magic Spoon cereal, bro. You've heard me talk about this delicious protein-dense cereal multiple times, and it's for good reason. I used to spend quite a bit of money myself on this stuff. It was my go-to cheat meal of sorts without actually being a cheat. It's like my only guilty-free cheat, essentially, because I used to eat like literal Frosted Flakes and milk as one of my cheat meals. And after a while, you start to realize, like, okay, if I'm gonna actually hit my protein goals for the day, not only do I have a bunch of brain fog now from this shitty cereal and no actual protein, now I have to double up on my calories for the day, not only because I fucked up by having this junky cereal, but in addition to that, I have to go have like a protein dense, you know, source of something now to hit my protein requirements for the day. This is the only thing that has allowed me to like 99%, 95 to 99%, depending on the flavor, hit my sweet tooth where I'm like actually satisfied as much as I would be with like the shittiest of shit, and still get my protein at the same time whilst being relatively mindful of calorie burden. So this stuff is 13 grams of complete protein per serving, just 4 grams of net carbs per serving, and keto friendly, 0 grams sugar, gluten-free, grain-free, and has no cane sugar, corn syrup, sugar, alcohols. It's all naturally sweetened with monk fruit, inulin, allulose. Like, it's the cleanest shit you could be getting. How they made it taste as good as it does using that stuff, I have no idea. Because when you use that stuff in pre-workout, ends up tasting like ass, to be honest. Like when you have a super potent pre. I really like this brand. You know, I keep talking about it because I actually eat their stuff, and I have for years now. So it's really cool they sponsor me, and it's obviously much appreciated when you guys, you know, support me through supporting them. So if you want to support me, please check out the link in the video description below. You can build your own variety box using my code Derek for $5 off. Choose from, you know, mix and match any of the flavors how you please. They have a money back guarantee if you don't like it, and they do ship to Canada and the UK. I mentioned how before I was having problems getting it to Canada because they didn't ship there. Now they do, so you don't actually need to go to your PO box anymore like I used to. So you can check it out, save $5 off, coupon code Derek, magicspoon.com/Derek, links in the description below. And back to our regularly scheduled programming. That will put the majority of individuals into super physiological territory. And at that point, you grind until you fucking plateau, and then you look at food, training, gear, make your decision based on what needs to incrementally increase based on needs basis, side effect risk, all of these different things, and then you titrate accordingly. Because again, this is not something that you're subjected to like 12 weeks, just like arbitrary set point. Like your cycle is 12 weeks on 250. You need to crash your fucking system after making like a measly amount of progress, even though a lot of guys will gain a shit ton from it, but some might not. You have to crash your system, recover to a, you know, just hit your fucking baseline recovery metrics of your gonadotropins are back in range, and then we're going back on 250 to blow up. Like, that's not, no one is asserting that, bro. So anyways, do I agree with this? I think in most cases, this makes sense. You know, you're going to, however, context dependent, and I will explain why in a sec here. So this guy, he made insane progress. It looks fucking great. So let's see what went into it. So we are now 15 months into any anabolic androgenic steroid use, and Tesh is up 35 pounds in lean mass. I'm confident we will get 50 pounds of lean muscle in under 2 years. And this will be from never going over 700 milligrams total anabolics and only using test and primo. The low period phases he runs are 150 test and 100 primo. So again, the low period phases, we do those for 8 weeks and then crack back on increasing over the 16 to 20 weeks on cycle up to 300 test and 400 primo. The strength gains in this period have been astronomical. Tesh and I train usually every couple weeks together, and he is catching me more and more on things we do. Going to be fun once we commit to a show. So like, this is, again, none of this shit is fucking responsible, safe, whatever, but there's definitely a smarter, more reasonable way to go about this, especially when it's a long game. If you're a young guy, you have a bunch of years in the tank, do you want to blast the shit out of yourself, put yourself in a position where you have brutal gynecomastia, acne, fucking cardiac issues, whatever it is, and then have to play catch up and, you know, fix yourself and pull things back, or introduce a bunch of random other stuff to, you know, attenuate issues that you may have not needed to otherwise, or just start at a reasonable baseline, push things into super physiological territory, milk it for whatever you can, and then continue as needed and push things as warranted if you need to begin with. But if you don't, minimum effective dose, the most ideal thing, I think most people would agree. Would you ever use more than you need to accomplish your goal? Doesn't really make sense. So for whatever your goal is, whatever that minimum effective dose to get there is, where you are otherwise not unnecessarily fucking yourself up, kind of makes sense to me. So for me, he's not cycling off of his introductory compound selection. So again, presumably this guy has some estrogen management issues to some extent. The Primo is going to act as a sort of competitive aromatase inhibitor of sorts, all but not like a technical aromatase inhibitor by chemical structure or based on its actual pharmacologic development. From a chemistry perspective, it's not literally an AI, but it is not a substrate for aromatase that produces some synthetic estrogen metabolite like a testosterone derivative might. It's a DHT derivative, but it will still compete for aromatase nonetheless and prevent as much testosterone from aromatizing to estradiol. So if you're trying to push your anabolic exposure higher, you're going to get more overall AAS burden with a very tissue selective compound that is very well tolerated clinically. This is like one of the most well tolerated, most developed, refined anabolic agents that have ever been developed in the lab, because shortly after the development of Primo, the government basically just like shut down the continuing development of this stuff, unfortunately, which sucks because we'd probably have way better compounds by now. But regardless, Primo is one of the best compounds there is and is why it is a DHT derivative of choice to stack alongside test when you are trying to push the anabolic protein expression vector harder, rather than just pushing test into the sky where you may encounter, DHT related side effects, estrogen management side effects. This is something that you can kind of push proportionally and kind of keep things at a more homeostatic, tolerable set point without having to crank the AIs or the SERMs or the whatever just to run your higher dose of test that you might otherwise not tolerate as well. But again, that's not to say that's the only way to do it. That's just presumably what is working for him. This will vary individual to individual, but ultimately he is at a baseline metric of like not far off of like HRT plus like a little bit of anabolic exposure on top of that with a little layer of Primo, which is not nothing. It does something, it's not crazy fucking high dose. It's going to do anything substantial other than, maybe hold metrics, hold body composition, hold performance that you just gained from your blast. Let health markers get back to a reasonable set point. Notably though, not try and just like arbitrarily get your gonadotropins in range just so you can justify to yourself that you've recovered your HPTA and then jump back on, even though like you're basically using a laundry list of SERMs and crashing your system to accomplish it. The PCT traditional method of doing that is not, the yo-yoing your system does not make a whole lot of sense if this is something you are going to be doing long-term, which presumably as a bodybuilder, this is a long-term commitment. You're not going to be like cycling off doing 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sure, you could do that, but you could make the argument that it's actually less healthy to be clearing it out of your system if you're just gonna be blasting your fucking shit super hard after too, to make up for the 1 step back that you had during your off cycle, in addition to crashing your system and the health ramifications that come from massively fluctuating body weight, water retention, blah, blah, blah. Like even when it comes to caffeine, we see like cardiovascular modifications from like a adaptation perspective. Once you've gotten used to a higher dose, like your body has an adaptation period whereby it gets used to a higher body weight. The fluctuations can be massively, I think, deleterious to cardiac function, to a bunch of different things where you're constantly going up and down, crashing your hormones, trying to recover to baseline, crashing your body weight a little bit, all of a sudden inflating with water, because you've just introduced a super physiological amount of hormones that you're not used to again. Like this yo-yoing is not, a practical approach, I think, that many bodybuilders are really doing nowadays. And we're just talking about that right now, not talking about, people using this for sports too, because that's a totally different discussion. And the applications for that obviously differ. But ultimately, if this is what this guy is trying to accomplish, is as safely as possible putting on mass, seemingly, I would imagine. And this seems like a really reasonable approach. Like, is he going to be blowing up off 150 to test 100 Primo? No, that's where these blast phases come in, where he's pushing upwards of 700 AAS. But again, would a lot of people believe this guy did this in the time frame he did on 700 AAS? Probably not. They'd be like, no, this guy's on fuck tons of shit. Genetic response, actual adherence to high quality diet and training, and intelligent compound protocol selection based on a needs basis with minimum effective doses titrated up accordingly can yield this outcome. And this is what I'm trying to highlight here, because again, it's not like this guy is not doing stuff. He's pushing the vector. It's just not as hard as some people might automatically assume you need to achieve these results. Is there some potential chance that JP is like downplaying, what he's using in order to come across as, make people not get the impression they need to blast their faces off, like he did back in his heyday in order to achieve monstrous results? It's certainly possible. However, he seems like a pretty fucking straightforward dude, and I would like to give him the benefit of the doubt here. And I do believe that this is actually what this guy is doing. So again, when it comes to breaking down like what dose makes sense for you, and is 300 too little? Should you be doing 250 to 300 because you don't need more? Should you be using 500? Should you be using 700 off the bat? Like, what should you be doing? I think you have to actually look at your individual response first of all. So I did a video a while ago, exactly how much muscle does 25, 50, 125, 300, and 600 milligrams of testosterone build? So again, when you look at these dose response studies, you can actually see the variability in what one individual takes does not equate to the same result for another individual. Just like if you take a dose of testosterone, what it equates to not just from a muscle growth aspect, but also from a like literal serum levels aspect in your blood. Like this was a video I did the other day, 500 mg test equals TRT. Actually, a bit of a clickbait title because they're talking about a guy who needed 500 tests just to get to 1100 nanograms per deciliter in his blood work. Which is like a lot of people are thinking bullshit, like there's no way. But I go over a study in that exact video where we go into this chart that shows a legitimate, pharmaceutical grade testosterone. The same, a bunch of individuals were subjected to the exact same half-gram administration. Then we see the variability in their total testosterone levels. And you can see one guy is upwards of like the fucking upper 3000s or mid 3000s in nanograms per deciliter. And the guy on the bottom, the most like hypo responder, is near 1,000 nanograms per deciliter from 500 shot of test. So again, obviously as you get to steady state concentrations, these things are going to, vary because this is day 4 of one shot. But at the end of the day, do you think the guy who took one shot of 500 and got up to 3,500 nanograms per deciliter or whatever this total T is, versus the guy who got up to like barely fucking super physiological with 500 tests, do you think their dose is going to be the same they need on cycle 1 to achieve like similar results or get their minimum effective dose? Like you might have a literal like enzymatic like cleaving issue for all we know. Like there are so many things that come into the metabolism of these drugs, and it's not plain as day like, 500 equals what you need or 300 equals what you need. There are genetic individual propensities to things that should account for the variability that comes into account when you decide what you need yourself. And this is why you get blood work done. And this is why you assess what the fuck you respond to and make judgment calls based on that. So it's not that anyone's like wrong necessarily. It's just the most logical and rational approach is probably to push things to right where the majority of people will get into super physiological territory. And then if you are getting to what you need and it's the effective dose to grow the way you need or to achieve your athletic endeavors, maybe you just leave it there. However, if you are trying to push the envelope harder and you are not responding, or you are one of these guys potentially, like maybe you need a bit of a higher dose. But again, the best way to find out how you respond to that first, you start at what takes you from natural to not natural. And then from there, you assess how you respond, because that's a difference, the magnitude of you going from like a 600 total naturally with endogenous diurnal rhythm fluctuations to you going to a chronic bleed where you're maintaining 1,200 nanograms per deciliter with a disproportionately high free testosterone too from lowering SHBG when you're administering exogenous testosterone. That difference, like there is some disparity likely of performance there. If it's like fucking negligible as hell and almost nothing, you might be like, okay, am I getting the most out of suppressing my system to nothingness right now? Maybe you're not. Maybe you're this guy. Maybe you need to push the envelope a bit harder. But at least you assessed it in a logical, responsible, careful, fucking titrated, meticulous way before you push the envelope up to 400, 500, 600, and you assess your estrogenic response, your DHT production, you're this, you're that. Do you have any side effects that you should be mindful of? Should you be pushing a DHT derivative harder instead of just pushing testosterone? Like this guy, presumably, did not end up at 500 tests for a reason. Like there is some reason why he is at only 300 tests and 400 primo instead of 500 tests and 200 primo. Because it's not like that's bad either. If you're at 500 tests and then anything above that, you're in like gyno territory. Not saying that it's guaranteed, but the likelihood gets higher and higher that it's an unmanageable stimulatory burden on gynecomastia development the higher you get. And at that point, maybe they justified, instead of, doing an AI, we do, Primo. And for him, maybe that 300 test mark is right at the borderline of where, more test was unmanageable without, an Aromasin or an Arimidex or a whatever. And that's where this came in, Obviously the justification varies, but ultimately, like, this needs to be, your protocols need to be intelligently designed and based on your needs, like not based on some arbitrary number. So if you go back, JP has cool log going, so to speak, of this guy's development. So this was back in March, 1 year of work. The chappie that was going nuts in my session yesterday shouting at me was Tesh13. He works with, I think this is JP's wife or girlfriend and myself helping manage getting you all your subs and clothes. He is also one of the only people I still coach. The pic on the left was 1 year ago, right? And right now he has gained over 30 pounds of lean tissue in the last year. Train as often as possible, and now I don't have to cue a single thing in a session. I don't have to teach a single thing. We just work, and I tell you what, he trains harder than 99.99% of the people I've ever trained with, and man, did he push me hard yesterday. We will do another 20 pounds of muscle in the next year, and then see how he fares on stage. I know how he will fare. Haha, love you, mate. Heart emoji. So, and his structure, like, this is a good front double bi, bro. Like, that bicep looks fucking solid. And then here, look at this V-taper. As he develops and gets this X-frame coming in, he looks sick, dude. So it should be interesting to see how he progresses. And ultimately, he's probably feeling great about the fact that he didn't unnecessarily stress his body more than he needed to. Because how many years do you have in the tank to accomplish your goals and do what you're trying to do? You only have so many years that you can burn through organs, dude. Like, organ stress is going to catch you at some point. You're not going to be able to tolerate the drugs the same way you did. You're going to have, deteriorated ejection fraction, left ventricular hypertrophy, cardiomegaly, blood pressure issues, which hopefully you don't because that's super manageable, kidney deterioration, whatever it is. Something becomes unmanageable at a point where blasting compounds is no longer the smart move for you. And if you can extend that time frame out, because the years that you were still being productive, you were using less systemic burden to accomplish an outcome that was still worthwhile, like, obviously your longevity where you can have more productive and more years overall in the tank is accomplished by doing it this way. So, like, this guy is probably super thankful he has JP in his camp who does not have him on 3 grams of shit. Because again, a lot of people would have used 3 grams to think that they needed that in order to accomplish this outcome. Maybe you're a genetic outlier like this guy. Like, I'm not discounting the fact that this guy has good genetics too, but still, like, a lot of people would have pushed way harder to try and accomplish this outcome if that's what they were seeking. And he probably is super fucking thankful that he did not do that. Because how many more, like, maybe he has an extra 1 year of blasting your face off versus 1 year of, like, conservative blasting where you still accomplish this outcome. Is that a whole nother year of fucking safe use that you have on your, like, that you can then use down the line too, because you did this in a safer, more manageable way and still got the outcome you were seeking? Totally plausible. Again, you only have one heart, one set of kidneys. Like, I guess if you don't get a transplant, whatever. But, like, ultimately, once you get to that point, like, you shouldn't be bodybuilding to begin with. And you can only take so much systemic stress. Eventually something's gonna give and you're going to have to give up this lifestyle and downsize, or just not use shit that is burdensome to a significant extent that you deem the ROI is not there anymore, if you want to avoid, like, early death. And hopefully, everyone's mindful of the fact that at some point this shit is not, going to be well tolerated by your body. At some point something's going to give. And you would hope that you extend the amount of practical years that you can actually be productive and enjoy the fruits of your labor. And, if this is something you base your life around, like, it would be wise to, again, acknowledge minimum effective dose, be responsible, and I think this is a great example of, like, what can be done based on individual fucking needs. So anyways, hopefully you guys found that informative. I thought that was a cool before and after, awesome progress, and cool to see JP being transparent about what they're doing. And I think we might do a podcast in the future. JP, we've talked a few times, but we'll see. And I don't know, like, we'll see if that happens. He's a busy guy, but it'd be dope if we could log on and, shoot the shit and whatnot and talk about, his training philosophies, gear use, etc. Like, he's pretty transparent about that stuff, more so than most other bodybuilders. So Yeah, I think that'd be cool. So anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. All the comments help the algorithm. They're much appreciated. Like, subscribe, check out my blog, moreplates.com. Follow me on Instagram at moreplates, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below, my preventative medicine, hormone replacement therapy platform. If you want to get connected with high quality doctors and medical providers who impart the same level of education information on our patients that I try to put out in a like video format on this channel, you know, keeping up with the most up-to-date literature on endocrinology, pharmacology, biology, etc. You know, that's what we pride ourselves on, is staying up to date on the recommendations for, you know, biomarker analysis, assessing endocrine imbalances, you know, cystatin C assessments for kidney health, you know, like lipid parameters that often go overlooked the importance of for actually assessing cardiovascular disease risk from an atherogenic perspective. So many things that frankly most clinics just don't give a shit about, and they just, you know, give you a baseline hormone panel, make sure you qualify for TRT with the most loose parameters possible, get you on a, you know, perpetually refilling testosterone, HCG, and astrazole script and kick you out the door because that's all they care about. That's not what we do. We're very prideful of our education and the information that we impart on people and our constant efforts to stay educated ourselves. So if you want a high quality doctor or medical provider, patient care coordinator, etc., who stays on top of this shit, will be in your camp to oversee your I don't know, goals, you know, from a mental clarity aspect, vitality aspect, biomarker optimization aspect, even dietary manipulation aspect, supplementation, sleep hygiene, etc. I would definitely recommend checking it out. I cannot overstate the importance enough of having a high quality doctor in your camp. As well, if you're a super aggressively, you know, like high risk bodybuilder, like guys who are doing stuff like this and exposing themselves to high doses of androgens, you need a doctor too who understands this shit and is not judgmental. You know, that's a big issue in this industry, unfortunately, is judgmental doctors who won't even take you seriously if you use this shit, don't want to help you, think you're just an irresponsible giant like fucking meathead and don't want to have anything to do with you. That's not us. We have individuals on staff who are very, very mindful of what goes into this lifestyle and have the knowledge to back up, you know, like ancillary medications, for example, things to be mindful of as a bodybuilder when you're exposing yourself to this level of oxidative stress, the androgens, the blah, 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 you know, things that go overlooked, like angiotensin receptor blockade, lipid management, etc. Like whatever doctor you have should know inside out if you're a bodybuilder, for example. So again, can't stress the importance of that enough. Anything else that supports me, it's all in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.